All right, knowing that they have not seen your video yet, and
Right.
knowing that Anna is going to join you just momentarily, why
Right.
don't you go ahead and start telling us about your journey and how you
Right.
got to be so passionate about a cause and to change the world.
Thank you. Thank you for asking. And I just want to tell everybody that I'm very, very honored to be part of the TRIO Leadership Summit virtually. And thank you, Jim, for having my sister and I speak with all of you. I commend you all for being there because you're basically doing the same thing that my sister and I like to do, and that is promote organ donation and live the best lives we can with this gift that we've received. So kudos to all of you for being there. So just to introduce, well, half of the pair. I'm Isabel, and my twin will be joining shortly. She's Annabelle. We go by Anna and Isa. We're 39 years old, and we're born with cystic fibrosis. It's a genetic lung disease. And yeah, we both live in California. I received a double lung transplant in 2004, so 7 years ago. And my sister received a double lung transplant in 2000, so 11 years ago. But then due to rejection, she received a second transplant in 2007. So she's going on almost 4 years of her second. And so really, I think I want to start by saying that my passion to be an advocate for organ donation started with being an advocate for myself. And I have a feeling that all of you can resonate with that because basically it started way back with our disease. We were in and out of the hospital starting at the age of 5. And even before that, we had to take medications. So my parents had to learn how to manage our condition, and eventually we learned how to manage our condition. And in the hospital was really where we noticed that, some things weren't working well and some things weren't really right. And so we had to learn how to speak out against them. And just for background, my sister and I are half Japanese and half German. My mother is Japanese. So I think unconsciously we learned her culture, which was to be a little bit more on the passive side and to not assert oneself and not to speak out. So we really started off as young patients being very intimidated and very scared to speak out. And over time, we learned to, be more and more assertive. And so I think that's how we started our advocacy, is really learning how to take care of ourselves. And Anna's going to join me right here. Sorry, I'm going to move over. Let's see if she can fit here. There she is. Hello, everyone. Sorry about the delay.
Hi.
Hi. Thanks for patience.
Thank
Isn't
you
this
for
great?
taking your time out to join us.
It's like,
Better
it's like
than
we're
flying
right.
all the way out here, I'll guarantee you that. Right, Steve?
Isn't that amazing? Now, how many of you are there?
Oh, there's about 15 of us here in the room. Some are
Okay,
joining us
good.
tomorrow.
15,000.
People coming and going. But
Right.
again, our whole theme is how an individual, or in your case,
Yes.
a pair of individuals, with a passion for something can change the world. And
Right,
you have
right.
a very unique story and a very visible story of using the
Yeah.
passion you have because of your life experience in going
Right.
out into the world well beyond this country to make a difference. And
Yeah.
we have the video to the movie trailer to show
Right.
whenever you want or at the end, either one, okay? So
Right.
just share with us how you got passionate, tell the story
Yeah.
about what you're doing around the world making this big difference.
Great, we will. So I was talking about how we started our advocacy as patients for ourselves, self-care and self-advocacy. But then, it started very informally. We were giving and receiving advice with our peers with cystic fibrosis. And eventually that led to mentoring as we grew older. We were, helping younger people who perhaps didn't know how to ask for things or didn't know what their options were. And so through mentoring, we started learning our advocacy as well. And I want to give Anna a chance to talk now.
I think part of having an illness is really an awareness, being aware of everything around us. And that included what we saw in the hospital. That also included what we saw in the cystic fibrosis community, and being aware of what the things that didn't sit well with us, and how could we as individuals, even at a young age, start to make a change by speaking out. And we became very kind of compulsive, if you will, about recording what we saw. And we started a journal when we were in the hospital, and that kind of became a historical record that we used later in life, believe it or not, decades later, to start writing our book when we wanted to really put everything down and form kind of a historical memoir of our life with cystic fibrosis. And that became The Power of Two, a twin triumph over cystic fibrosis, which was our memoir published in 2007. So,
Yeah, and I actually started writing the book in 2003. When I was on disability, I had end-stage lung disease, so I was on oxygen full time and I had multiple treatments to do all day long. So I really, excuse me, I went on disability, so I really couldn't do a whole lot. But what I could do was sit down and write. And then Anna joined the board. It was actually my mother who asked us to write a book. And why did we write? We wrote mainly to sort of review our lives, and for me it was important to memorialize people that we had lost and put them in writing and speak on their behalf. And also, to be honest, it was to leave something behind in case we died. And that was very realistic at the time. It was also a way, while we were writing our book, we actually had the incredibly rare but wonderful opportunity to meet our donor families. Both of us met our donor families. And so that gave us the charge that we're not just writing our story, we're writing their story on their behalf, putting words into the family's experience and their loss so that the world can remember who these two young men were that saved our lives. So what else?
A little background, I received a double lung transplant in 2000. She said that. But I do want to say that back then, lung transplant was just starting to become more routine. And it was very far and few between of my cystic fibrosis peers that actually received lung transplants. So shortly after my transplant, of course, any transplant is a miracle. Any transplant is an incredible, humble experience. But with lung transplant, I felt like this was extra special, and just the contrast in health from having a lifelong genetic disease that basically started in utero with problems. And then all of a sudden, free from that, I had a voice, and I had a voice to share an experience of being reborn in a way I had never imagined. No cystic fibrosis medication would ever give me the health that I got from lung transplantation. And a fellow liver transplant peer that I met through the U.S. Transplant Games and the California Transplant Donor Network introduced me to TRIO. And that is where I really first met at the TRIO Bay Area chapter. That's where I really first met other livers, kidneys, hearts, other transplant recipients. And I realized, wow, we have this cause. We have this cause that we, as a group, have a voice to share with the world that, look, transplantation works. And we have in a way, I felt that I had a duty to be that voice, to show other people that this does make a difference, this does work, and it's not just some, thing you see on ER or something you see on TV that is glorified. It's really real life people whose lives are changed. And I work as a healthcare provider. I do so many things that I would not be able to do without transplant, and I really want people to see that. So that's right.
A lot of transplant patients write books. Yours was
Yes.
even more captivating as I remember reviewing it and helping with that. You didn't have the money to do it, but you did it anyway. And then,
Right.
how did you get into bagpipe?
Oh, that's me. Well, 2 months after Anna just talked about how she got involved with TRIO and California Transplant Donor Network. So sure enough, right after my transplant, 3 years after hers, I decided to do the same thing. And so we really became a tag team after our transplants. We were both healthy and we could support each other. So 2 months after my transplant, I went to the California Transplant Donor Network donor recognition ceremony. And they have a Hispanic, Mexican band, and they have a singer, and it's very multicultural. And there was a bagpipe band, and I said, wow, I want to do that. I want to do that because it's the greatest celebration of my lungs, and also it's symbolically a way for my donor to be heard and for the world to listen to his lungs. And so I started taking lessons and joined a band, and today at clinic, my pulmonary function test was 124%, so I'm very grateful that my lung capacity has increased dramatically from the bagpipes. So so since the transplants, I think we really jumped right into transplant games and cystic fibrosis volunteering and TRIO and all kinds of activities.
I think the bottom line is that we no longer had an excuse that we didn't feel well. So we had a hard time saying no, and I think that can be a problem for a lot of people who want to give back, and suddenly they have no illness to keep them from not giving back. So we really kind of obsessively jumped into all these opportunities and really flourished in our social network and meeting wonderful people who've inspired us and really taught us along the way, people who were transplanted before us, who really gave us the inspiration and the courage and the mentoring and the paths that we need to keep healthy. Because as many people know, transplantation is, we still have to do a whole lot to take care of ourselves with diet and exercise and religiously taking our pills and checkups and so on. So it's really other people that mentored us.
That's pretty amazing, because here you are surviving an illness that your parents were told, take them home and enjoy them while you're young, because they're going to die shortly anyway.
Exactly.
Into their 30s now, taking this gift out and getting involved with TRIO, and then taking up the cause with a bagpipe ball thing, which certainly shows people the lungs are working, doesn't it? And writing a book, which is very empowering, but take the transition to a movie in Japan. That's getting kind of overboard, wouldn't you say?
No. We've been really blessed. Things have just unfolded wonderfully. And so what happened after our book was published, that we started to travel around the country speaking about cystic fibrosis and organ donation. And these opportunities just came up for us, and we were very, very lucky. And then my mother gave the book to a Japanese friend who then submitted it to a Japanese publisher, and one of the top publishers in Japan wanted to publish it in Japanese. And the reason being is that the last couple of years, organ donation has become a very hot topic in Japan. Some of you may not know that Japan has the lowest rates of organ donation in the industrial world. So in 2009, there were 9 brain dead donors in the entire country of 130 million people. And then in 2009, they changed the law. So there were more donors available, or legally it was easier to donate without, worrying about malpractice and lawsuits and so on. So the law changed, but still in 2010, in a year, there were 36 brain dead donors. So the consent rate is extremely low, and so the publisher was very interested in the story about organ donation and a story that would share with the public the benefits of organ donation, especially because we wrote about our donor families and why it was beneficial for our donor families in their grief to give their organs to us.
Another issue in Japan is that chronic illness, disability, patient advocacy is very much in a different place than it is in the United States, where there's a lot of shame associated with illness. People who are ill do not generally become very public about it. Parents tend to hide that. There's really no mainstreaming of children with disabilities in schools. And so to have a patient's perspective and a patient's voice express themselves in our book was really novel. And they were very, very impressed about all of the things that we learned and that we could share, and our perspective and our joys and our sorrows of being ill. That we shared in our book. And then when we were invited to give some speeches in Japan to share our perspective during a book tour, we certainly jumped on that opportunity. And meanwhile, in the US, a producer, a documentary film producer, got hold of our book and was very interested in following us to Japan for this book tour. And so there we were in October 2009. We went on a 26-day tour of 10 cities in Japan and gave over 21 speeches, believe it or not, in Japanese, which was very challenging, about organ donation, living with cystic fibrosis, and patients' perspective. And we had the most amazing learning experience to see what different cultures experience and what patients experience and how different our life would have been if we had lived in Japan.
Right.
No, truthfully, we probably would not have survived.
And I just want to share with all of you who probably work in communities that may be very mixed culturally. Well, in Japan, what is the big deal? Like, why are people against organ donation? Well, the main religion in Japan is Shinto, and that is a religion that respects all things from nature, that everything natural is just the right way that the world should be. And so, of course, organ donation is not seen as a natural act. Death happens naturally and unfolds naturally, and so we shouldn't kind of mess with that. And so that's one of the main reasons. And then there's other issues like you shouldn't touch a dead body because it's dirty. The body belongs to the ancestors, so what right do we have to give our organs to someone else? The soul remains in the body even after death for several days, so why give organs if your soul is in them? There's also the belief that, of course, the heart that death doesn't happen until the heart stops. So it's very difficult for Japanese to believe in brain death, that somebody on a ventilator on life support with their heart beating is actually dead. And then I think most importantly, the custom in Japan, there is no custom in Japan to give to strangers. That's why living donation is only within family members. There's no altruistic donors. And so what does all of this mean? It means that people are uncomfortable giving their organs. So I'm sharing this because the way that we gave our speeches and how we educated people was, respecting their belief systems, but then trying to kind of explain ourselves and explain the importance of organ donation around those belief systems and how can we look at them in a different way from the perspectives of recipients, but also the perspectives of our donor families.
And we certainly did not want to go to Japan and say, our way is better than your way and what's wrong with you. It was not that kind of approach. It was certainly more of this is our experience. There are benefits to meeting the donor families in most people's experience, and really just being very careful about how we worded things, and certainly by no means alienating. And a big component of our trip was really to give thanks to donor families, because in Japan there is really no system to give thanks to donor families. They don't get any recognition whatsoever. They can write thank you. They can receive thank you letters, but it is forbidden for the recipient to meet them. And so they often feel very stigmatized and unappreciated. And we wanted to show what goes on in the U.S. and things like the U.S. transplant games and donor recognition ceremonies. And they really their eyes were opened to that concept.
Amazing.
So
I've got to say, I'm not sure what I'm more impressed with, your message or the breathing power you have in being able to speak so clearly and without a breath in between with those new lungs.
Thank you. At the transplant games, I learned that I don't only have the gift of bagpipes, but the gift of speaking.
But you have a bad signal.
You just hit video call.
Say what?
Hit video call. The green video call. If they don't.
That green button on the front of the mobile.
They must have.
Give us 30 seconds, then we'll go to the trailer movie. And then we'll get them back together.
That's all close. And that's all close. That's what
They have the same place.
I guess I breathe too
That's what it
hard.
looks like. And it surrounds 3/4.
See, it's nice.
Yeah,
Digger had each panel.
Yeah, this was 2005.
2 panels overshoot.
Yeah.
Because I don't think it's
Did
even
it?
shown in our.
Steve, is that your chapter they're talking about? The
Yes.
Bay? Yeah?
Yeah.
And are they regular involved with your chapter or just?
They come to quite a few of the meetings. Let's see, let me make a couple of comments from, I was privileged to have seen the entire film.
Okay.
And one of the elements I think which got to me the most was people on the street asking for donations for, say, their children to have a transplant, because the Japanese insurance system does not cover that. It's, you're on your own. Typically, people go to other countries. Great Britain, Australia, some of the other European countries have put the kibosh on transplants there, so some are coming here as an option. I know they have one person they're trying to, who is looking for a kidney at the University of Iowa Transplant Center and is trying to raise money for, and they've had a couple of events for her. But I think that was the most telling thing in the movie itself for me personally, was seeing people, you know, when you're waiting for a transplant, you're sick, you don't have a whole lot of energy. And to have to go to that extent to try to pay for it is amazing. A couple other things. I don't know if in the future there'd be an opportunity, but Isa and Anna gave like an 1.5-hour presentation on donation in Japan, all the intricacies, which I felt was fascinating. And if there's an opportunity to do that here or some other trio function, it would be very worthwhile. It's a tremendously unique system. Isa and her bagpipes, I sing in a men's choir at my church, and about a month ago, Isa played her bagpipes as an introduction for us,
Wow.
which was really wowed the people there, I think.
That was a bit of a transplant game, you probably saw her at the,
Yeah,
recognition ceremony.
she played the national anthem then. So, yeah, those are the only things I bring up.
The other thing I wanted to ask them about, as an introduction to our next session, really, was Isa serves on the Patient Affairs Committee right now, along with Merle and myself. And so I wanted to use her experience to sort of get into that.
Mm-hmm.
But if I may, let me go to the video, and it's going to take me a second to get the sound up.
My name is Annabelle Mariko Stenzel.
My name is Isabel Yuriko Stenzel Burns. We are twin sisters. We were both born with cystic fibrosis.
Every hospitalization they experienced, I felt like I did something wrong, and it was very, very difficult.
Cystic fibrosis causes progressive lung disease. As your lungs become more damaged, the only hope for survival is lung transplantation.
Right now, we have this terrible problem of a limitation in the numbers of available organs for those who desperately need them.
She's 29 and she's at the end of her life with cystic fibrosis.
No matter how hard I try, it's still gonna win.
Here you go.
Answer with video.
Answer with video.
Middle, answer with video.
Lost the cursor.
Hello?
All right, we're back again.
Sorry about that. It's my fault. My computer decided to reboot in the middle of our talk.
Well, I'm impressed. That was a quick reboot for this laptop.
Please, everybody get Macintosh, don't get HP, because Windows decides to just restart in the middle of our wonderful conversation.
So sorry about that.
I am so embarrassed. I apologize.
Well, we got into your movie trailer a little bit, and Steve,
Oh, good.
Steve was giving some background to your involvement out there with Trio, and having seen the whole film, some commentary about that. But go ahead. One thing I would also ask you as you're moving ahead to talk about, we're about to have a session on supporting UNOS and being involved in committee work there. And so if you would venture into that as another way that you help change the world by your work with the Patient Affairs Committee. So pick up where
Sure.
you left off and just add that in there.
Right, thank you. And I just want to be a little bit realistic that, I mean, I don't think we've changed the world, but we've done what we could as
I'm sorry, we're
individuals.
going to take a vote here. How many people feel by writing a book, making a movie, traveling to Japan, working on UNOS committee, that they have changed the world? I'm sorry, you just got outvoted. We think you changed the world.
You guys
We've
are all
made a-
doing that.
We've made a small impact as everyone can in
Yes.
the limited ability of our health restraints, our time constraints, our energy constraints, and truthfully, we have to pay attention to our husbands at some point.
So, yes, I've been involved with the UNOS Patient Affairs Committee for 3 years, and together with Jim and a lot of remarkable people. And it's just been a wonderful experience because honestly, why do we do what we do? Well, a lot of it involves giving back because we have received so much. We love life, and giving back is one part of that because there's maybe you can say there's a little sense of obligation or duty to give back, maybe even a little bit of guilt because we're still here and our donors aren't. And so many of our friends with cystic fibrosis have died. And so if we're still here, we want to make the most of giving back. And so Patient Affairs Committee is a great way to learn about policies and what's really going on in the decision makers in organ donation. And we read a lot of different research and ideas that people have about how to improve our efficiency and fairness and distribution of donated organs. And so why do I do it? I do it because it's really interesting. It's just fascinating to learn. And it's also humbling because there's so many people in this country who work very hard to make sure that people like me and people like you can live. It's pretty amazing. And so I'm unfortunately ending my 3-year term on Patient Affairs Committee, but I'll be joining the Ethics Committee. And I'm really excited about that because transplant is not something that's always smooth. There's a lot of difficult decisions that have to be made. And I think, I have a public health background, so this is my way to make use of my education to give back to the organ donation arena. And I just want to pitch, and I know Jim probably does this too, is encouraging all of you to think about participating in a committee because it's just really fascinating.
We're going to have a panel here in just a couple minutes, and there's several questions they're going to be asked to answer. You just answered one of them. But the next question is, so how did you get involved? How did you get on a committee with UNOS?
If I think back, I think I was nominated.
By who and how did that happen? So people here who are interested, how can they get involved in the committee? That's why I'm asking the question.
Right. That's easy to do. You basically can call UNOS and ask for the patient affairs manager. You can Google UNOS, patient affairs manager. Her name happens to be Frida Wilkins, and ask about ways for you to be involved as a patient. And all of the committees, and I didn't prepare properly, but I know there's at least a dozen committees at UNOS, ad hoc international relations, living donor, thoracic committee, liver committee, and so on. And so you can choose what you're interested in. And maybe if they don't have slots now, they put you on a list, and when they have an opening, they would consider you. So you do have to, ideally it's good to have some medical health background, and it's ideally important to have transplant community information and background. I think it would be hard for anybody to walk from the transplant clinic, as a patient straight into these committees, because they do involve some, general community knowledge.
Let me do this. I'm going to open this up to any questions from the audience. I'm not sure if you're going to be able to hear them, but if they want to come up to the microphone, they can, or I can repeat the question. Let me have any questions for Isa or Anna. Steve? Your friend Steve is from out your chapter area.
Good.
He's going to come on up to the microphone. You can see him walking up in your video there.
Sure. I'm so glad you're there. I wish I was there with you.
I know.
You guys should have come out. I would have taken you sailing. That's where I was. One of the things when we were out of touch, out of contact with you, was I expressed what a wonderful job I thought you had done when you, at our chapter meeting, presented. I think it took like an hour and a half, blow-by-blow account of organ donation to Japan. And I thought it was such a great education from that perspective. And I think I would recommend if, you know, there's any trio gathering or something where you could do that as an education event here, because I think it would be very, very worthwhile. It's gave me a sense of how dramatically different on a global scale transplant can be.
Exactly.
And I suggest something else to you. We have our transplant presentation library, and we would love to take something like that, record it, and add it to the library so that it's available all over the country to both our chapters and members at large. And you don't have to know anybody that's got a camera or anything out there, do you?
We can work with that. We can do something.
Don't let them get carried away with being overly professional about it. We just put a camera up in the corner and do it. So, you know, this is not a year-long project. This is when you get that audience to get them to capture it and give it to us, we can put it up there.
Right, and we've been blessed to speak for the Association of Multicultural Affairs and Transplantation Conference. And really, you know, maybe Japan is a tiny country and maybe none of you, you know, have that much knowledge or relationship to Japan, but I think what we share about like the cultural differences regarding organ donation and regarding death are really across the board applied to many different cultures. Of course, Chinese and Korean and Filipino and a lot of Asian cultures, but also Middle Eastern and certain Eastern European cultures. The belief of, you know, not everybody is like Americans, and as you know, only 35% of Americans are registered to be donors, and so what is preventing the rest of us from signing up? We all have belief systems that either support organ donation or unfortunately don't.
And I think what we did at the TRIO meeting in the Bay Area of giving a lecture is something that I would like to expand outside of the transplant community. So my next passion is to contact Buddhist temples and Asian American churches. And I've already gotten in touch with 2, and I have to admit that sometimes so far, those 2, there is resistance. And I do want to try to break into that barrier and kind of explore, well, what, you know, can they just listen? Even though they may not agree or they may be averse to hearing about it, you know, just to try tap on that door a little bit. And really, I feel like preaching to the choir in the TRIO in the transplant community is one thing, but also getting out there and really getting to the trenches of the people who really have not had transplant on their radar and have, you know, perceptions and biases, and have conversations with them, because it doesn't have to mean flying to Japan and doing that. We can do that right here in our backyard in the San Francisco Bay Area where there's so many Asian populations.
Well, that's really great. Unless somebody else has another question, I'm going to say goodbye to the 2 of you so we can watch the rest of your movie trailer. And
Great, thank you.
For taking your
Thank you
lunch
very
hour.
much.
I wish you could have some of the sandwiches. We got plenty of food here. I mean, it does work virtually. Hey, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us. Thank you very much. Have a good day. Enjoy the rest of your conference.
And all of
Thank
you
you.
keep up the...
Bye-bye. Now, just hang on 1 second while we get back to the video and we hang up this call.
Take care.
Take care.
And
Get out of Skype. Going back to where we were. That looks like it's too far gone.
At the end of her life with cystic fibrosis,
No matter how hard I try, it's still gonna win.
when you receive a gift as amazing as a transplant, there is some sense of obligation to give back.
Advocacy is the engine of change, and the power of advocacy is it can start with one person. In this case, 2 people.
I was her partner in life, going through end-stage disease together. The way that Japanese culture deals with transplant and organ donation is very different from us. We have friends who are standing on street corners with a box saying, please give money for a transplant. Before, I was very apprehensive of being so public, but now I see it as an opportunity to touch people's lives.
To a theater near you sometime soon. Steve, did you, having seen the full movie, catch what the number was, what they're trying to raise for somebody to get a transplant? $1 million something.
Yeah, I don't recall.
I don't know yen or what I heard, it's like $1 million at the raise.
It was, yes, I think 140 million yen, which is 1.6 million US dollars.
But it wasn't that much for a kidney, was it?
That's just what that blurb
But that was it? Yeah, boy.
Well, they may also have to travel out of the country.
Yeah.
Who knows what all that,
I don't recall.
what transplant it was.
And basically, the Trio Japan chapter, that's what they do, is help the people raise their funds so that they can get a transplant.
JT, my understanding was on their trips to Japan, they've had some fairly close interaction with the president of Trio Japan and that group.
That was the other thing I wanted to add, because there was a mission there to make that connection to our Japanese chapter. And so I just wanted to ask them what came of that. They did meet who we thought was the head, right? But there doesn't seem to be much contact or understanding or something.
Yeah.
It didn't come out to what we hoped it would be. But there is a Japanese contingent of Trio, which pays very nicely, how much each year, Sylvia? $2,000 in dues. And we have no other contact except that they send money orders over, and for the next month, Sylvia has to go down to the post office one at a time, trying to cash these in, because they don't have enough money to cash all these money orders. So every time she turns around, you go down, you have a couple more cash now, here's 2 more of this money orders, until we finally get it into our account.
Jim, I'm wondering if, when Anna and Issa are there, and my understanding is they make fairly, say twice a year they're in Japan, try to get some of the members there to come here for a session like this. Would that be an opportunity?
They'd certainly be welcome. We don't have any way of communicating with them unless they can make contact when they're over there.
They probably can.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have a list. We just have.
Sylvia, do you have a contact with the person that sends the money?
Yes, I always send her a thank you card, and she sends me the same thing. It's just Ms. Lee, here's our participation.
All right.
And I've asked that we learn of an email, do you know this person, and, I just sit there and go down with that.
Maybe in our next note, we can say we had guests who've been to Japan talking, and it was suggested that, see if we can't get an open dialogue going. Hey, not going to happen unless you ask, right?
That's it.
At our conference in Jacksonville, there was somebody from Japan there.
Was there?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Great. How did they make contact and find you and get there? How did that happen?
She told me, and I can't remember.
She was in the medical field. She was
Yeah,
doing some
she
kind of
wanted to
research.
promote organ donor awareness in Japan.
Yeah,
That's
So
why
she found us and came
Yeah.
up,
Yeah.
as opposed to we reached out
Through
to come
Trio
on.
Japan, she found us
Wow.
and came to the conference. She was on studies in the United States.
We're going to have, I'm just adjusting some things here, okay? Our speakers that were key have been taken care of while we have them here. We've got a little bit more flexibility. That was our 3 o'clock call that came in at 20 after in the middle of the meeting saying, oh, are you in a meeting? Well, yeah. They had the agenda, they knew what was going on, so, but it all worked out. I'd like to offer a snack time, but as we do, those of you who were with us last year, remember that the big thing was the Transplant Family House that Howard Nathan had his passion about. And I wanted to give you an update on that. This is the Transplant House. It's not open yet. They're training volunteers. In fact, that's some of the volunteers coming out of training right now. And this is some visions of inside there. That kitchen, by the way, is 2 separate modules. Right? that, this is one back here. This is the same thing here. And over on the other side, there's two more. So there's 4 kitchens around these islands, either side. Back in here are 4 industrial-sized freezers and refrigerators to hold the food that volunteers are going to come in and prepare meals for the people that stay there. 30 rooms for transplant families to come and stay. They can only stay 9 months, and then they have to leave, and a day later they come back. Okay? $40 a night if they can afford it. Once they come, they basically park in the parking lot, and they can leave their car there. That's it. The shuttle will take them back and forth to the hospital. The meals will be prepared for them there. They can come down, do it in the kitchen. It's a total environment set aside for them.
Where is
Julie?
this?
I'm sorry.
Who's funding it?
Gift of Life Donor Program, the OPO.
The OPO is funding
The
it?
OPO
Well,
is.
through volunteer, they had a capital campaign, they've got all kinds of, and then volunteers have all kinds of fundraisers, multiple golf outings, pancake breakfasts, all kinds of stuff.
I think it's the first OPO sponsored family house.
I was
It's
just
some
gonna
kind of
say,
It
hospital.
is first, yeah.
And-
Because we've had, in the past in Cleveland, we started something, a similar idea 15 years ago, and the woman who helped bring the people together, money went into her bank account. So when it took a while for anybody, and it's just in the last year that people, it's okay to talk about they're trying to do it again. That's why I was wondering who's funding it.
Yeah, and this will be, what's different about this is, as you said, it's OPO supported as opposed to hospital supported. And this house will support families of patients at 8 Philadelphia, downtown Philadelphia transplant hospitals.
Yeah, maybe more than 25 miles away. And if they're filled, they have arrangements with local hotels to give rooms at the same rate. And the family house will pay the additional charge for those rooms. And so one of the hospitals is doing the same thing with 10 rooms at one of those transplant centers. They're in the same throes of trying to get open. It was amazing, and Susan can tell you, she took these pictures, by the way. Elizabeth, have you been through there yet? And so anybody that's been there is just amazed at what they've come so far.
I'm looking at it, that's fabulous.
And that's the dream of the man in the center here. And he was our keynote speaker last year. All right, Howard Nathan, those are 2 famous doctors who in fact have 2 parts of the education center named for them in the organ procurement organization, which is a 4-story building a block away from that transplant house. Okay, and in fact, the infrastructure, the internet infrastructure is connected to the OPO through a satellite, or not a satellite, but a beam antenna. And so they're really connected from that standpoint. And it's really amazing to see what he's come. My point is this: another man with a passion, out to make a difference in the world. He's been 36 years now, 37 years with this organization, something like that. And he's got what is recognized as one of the most biggest OPOs in the country, certainly. Recognized his leadership all over the world. He's been the head of every organization there is. And Susan, they just had a reunion of
transplant professionals. Those 2 doctors were the original Philadelphia transplant surgeons. They were competitors working at different hospitals at the time, and were not fond of each other at all. And Howard has led our local OPO for 35, probably 36 or 37 years now. And they had a dinner. These 3 were honored, and they had transplant surgeons come in from all over the country. They were in Philadelphia a lot of them for a larger conference, the Transplant Congress. But they had this dinner, and lots of hugging and kissing. People who, doctors and nurses and staff who hadn't seen each other because they, moved off and moved on and spread around the country. One of my transplant surgeons was there, and he's now in Virginia. now a director in Virginia. And there were, Tom Peters was there, he's from Florida. They came in from all over the country, it's very interesting.
And they had the volunteers come together for the grand opening. They had a tiered cupcake tree of blue and white cupcakes, and when the main speaker did the welcome, they had about 20 or 30, including some Trio members there, to represent that in the middle of this convention center event. So it's quite something, and Howard Nathan's, again, I'll have a number of these people who have gone out and just made a difference with their passion for whatever they're going to do, and half of that is just believing you can do it. How he ever believed that he could raise $13 million for this house and staff it with volunteers and have them cook meals every night. And I think the annual budget for it is in the $500,000 range. So it's not just that glossy capital campaign. Somehow you got to keep it up afterwards. And we'll show you partially how he does that in a later slide at another point. So we're going to take a break at this point. All right, restrooms around the corner. Yes, Drew.
Ronald McDonald House, is that only children's hospital?
Yeah. And it's the same type of model.
Yeah.
In fact, the director who got this launched came from Ronald McDonald House. And they work very closely to learn the lessons that Ronald McDonald has.
And they since worked closely with the Ronald McDonald House in, I think, Baltimore. Faith has been there many times, and other people have been many times. See how they operate.
We'll have more stories next year from them. Take a break.